I used to believe I had the kind of life people envied. My name is Emily, and for the past 6 years, I've been married to Daniel. He was charming, dependable, and deeply attentive. We built our life slowly but surely. No extravagant fairy tale, but something real. From morning coffee rituals to our shared playlist on long drives, everything felt just right. I worked as a freelance editor, while Daniel ran a small graphic design firm. We had plans for children, a trip to Italy, and maybe even moving closer to my family. Life had its routine, but I never found it dull. Daniel was the kind of husband who remembered anniversaries without hints and left notes in my lunch bag. Friends often said we were the ideal couple. I agreed. If there were secrets between us, they had to be small ones, forgotten lunch dates, maybe old crushes. Nothing serious. At least, that's what I thought. One rainy Saturday afternoon, while organizing the attic for a potential home office, I came across a dusty old box. It had Daniel's college memorabilia, yearbooks, photos, notes from old roommates. Nostalgic and harmless, I smiled at the young version of my husband smiling back from the pictures. Then, buried beneath a stack of old sketchbooks, I found an envelope. Faded beige paper, handwritten, no postal stamp. It had Daniel's name on it in unfamiliar cursive. I hesitated. It wasn't sealed. I hadn't meant to open it, but my curiosity won. The first line read, "Daniel, I didn't know how to tell you this before, but I'm late." My breath caught. I read further. "It's been 3 weeks, and I'm scared. I don't know what you want, but I can't do this alone." The letter was signed, Claire. I read it 3 times, my heart pounding louder each time. I had never heard that name before, not in 6 years of marriage. My hands were shaking. Who was Claire? Why had she written this? Was she telling Daniel she was pregnant? 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. Was this some old scare from his college days? A misunderstanding? Or something more? Why hadn't Daniel ever mentioned it? The more I thought about it, the more every detail of our life began to blur. Every compliment, every promise. I put the letter back in the envelope, sat in silence for what felt like hours, and watched the rain streak down the attic window. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay beside Daniel as he slept peacefully, unaware that a storm had begun to rage inside me. I didn't know what the truth was yet, but I had a sinking feeling. Maybe I didn't know the man I married as well as I believed. And the worst part? I wasn't sure I wanted to know the whole truth. But the letter had changed something. There was no going back to before. I just didn't realize yet how deep this secret went, or how much it would test everything I believed about love, loyalty, and the man I thought I knew. The next morning, I waited until Daniel left for work before pulling the letter out again. I needed to be sure I hadn't imagined it. But the words were still there, just as raw and real as the night before. Claire's handwriting was steady, but emotional. She wrote about fear, confusion, and how she didn't want to pressure him, but that he deserved to know she was pregnant. She mentioned a night they had spent together after a campus party, how things had changed between them after, and how she hadn't been able to reach him since. That letter had never been sent, which meant Daniel had never responded. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I needed answers, but I wasn't ready to confront Daniel without more information. I remembered one of his old friends from college, Mark, who now lived in town. We'd met him once at a housewarming years ago. I found his contact through social media and messaged him, saying I was working on a surprise for Daniel's birthday and needed a bit of help recalling some old memories. A few hours later, he called. We exchanged small talk, but I quickly brought up Claire. There was a pause. Then Mark asked quietly, "Why are you asking about her?" His tone was cautious. I said I found something while cleaning the attic. Mark hesitated again before saying, "Yeah, Claire was someone Daniel was close to in college. Really close." It ended messy. She left school suddenly. Nobody knew why, but the rumors, they weren't light. My heart dropped. Mark didn't know the full story either, but the way he spoke confirmed one thing. Daniel had never told me the truth. I hung up, more unsettled than before. I needed to hear it from him. That evening, I sat across from Daniel at the kitchen table and placed the letter between us. He froze the moment he saw it. His face changed completely. I didn't raise my voice. I just asked, "Who is Claire?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stared at the letter like it had come back from the dead. After a moment, he said, "I didn't know you found that." Asked again. That's when he told me. He and Claire had been together briefly during his final year. She was vibrant, impulsive, and intense, nothing like me. Things ended abruptly, and she disappeared without a word. He never knew she was pregnant. He had found the letter years later in a box she returned through a mutual friend, unopened. He said he kept it but never opened it until recently. I asked if he had tried to find her. He admitted he had just once, years ago, but gave up after hitting dead ends. I asked him the one thing I was most afraid of. "Do you have a child out there?" He didn't answer right away, but his silence was loud enough. That silence confirmed what I feared most. Something real had happened. Something that had been hidden from me all this time. Daniel finally spoke, his voice low and almost ashamed. He said he had always intended to tell me, but every time he tried, he convinced himself it wasn't necessary, that the past wouldn't catch up. He admitted he had recently found Claire online through an old alumni group. She had a son, 13 years old. No father listed. No mention of Daniel anywhere. But he recognized the timeline and something about the boy's eyes that shook him. He knew. He didn't need a DNA test. I sat there stunned, unable to process the betrayal. It wasn't just the child. It was the years of silence, the decision to carry this secret into our marriage, the choice to lie by omission every single day. He had robbed me of the right to know, to decide if I wanted to share a life with someone who had another one buried in the past. When I asked why he didn't tell me the moment he found out, his answer made it worse. He said he was afraid I'd leave, that I wouldn't understand, that I'd see him differently. He was right. I did. Not because he made a mistake before we met, but because he built our entire relationship on a cracked foundation. Love without honesty isn't love. It's performance. And I suddenly questioned every good memory we had. I told him I needed space, not just to think but to feel. My emotions were too tangled: rage, heartbreak, confusion, pity. I hated that I still loved him. I hated that I was trying to find justification for him when he hadn't given me any. He followed me down the hallway, trying to say more, but I stopped him. I didn't want another word. I needed truth, not apologies. Over the next few days, we barely spoke. He texted me updates, where he was going, when he'd be home, like we were roommates instead of husband and wife. I stared at the letter every night, as if it held more answers than it actually did. I started imagining the boy, wondering if he looked like Daniel, if he knew about him, if he wondered why he didn't have a father. And then, more painfully, I thought about the family we were planning, the one I had dreamed of, and how it now felt like a shadow compared to what already existed. There's a special kind of betrayal that comes not from cheating, but from withholding truths that could change everything. It's the betrayal of not being trusted with a full story, of being denied the right to choose your life with open eyes. Daniel tried to explain his guilt, how he was a coward for hiding it, how he thought he was protecting both me and the boy. But protection built on lies isn't safety, it's control. I told him if there was any chance of fixing us, he'd have to confront his past head-on. Because I couldn't stay married to someone who kept part of himself locked away. Love demands all of you, or it's not love at all. A week later, Daniel told me he had reached out to Claire. He said she was surprised, guarded, and not interested in reopening old wounds. But he asked the one question that had haunted him for years. Was the boy his son? Claire confirmed it. She said she never told him because she didn't think he wanted to be involved. She'd raised the boy alone, and he had never asked about his father. She didn't want to disrupt his life now. Daniel said she allowed him to write a letter to the boy, no promises, just an honest introduction if he ever chose to read it. When he told me this, something shifted. I saw him making a choice I had been waiting for. Ownership. Not just of the past, but of the consequences. It didn't erase the pain, but it was a start. I asked him what he wanted now. He said he wanted our marriage, but not with secrets. That if I wanted to walk away, he wouldn't stop me because, for the first time, He understood what he had done. I spent days trying to figure out what I wanted. Leaving seemed justified, but it also felt incomplete. I still loved him, despite everything. I didn't know if that love was enough, but I wasn't ready to decide on anger alone. So I told him something simple. I needed to meet Claire. Not to argue, not to accuse, just to understand the full story from the person who lived it too. Claire agreed. Our conversation was direct. She didn't sugarcoat anything. She confirmed Daniel had no idea about the pregnancy back then. She said she had written the letter but couldn't face sending it. She didn't think he was ready to be a father. When I asked why she never told him even after, she said by the time she considered it, too much time had passed, and she feared the chaos it would bring. I saw in her not a villain, but a woman who made hard choices, just like I was facing now. After that meeting, I didn't get clarity, but I got context. I started to see this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about the collision of three people's separate truths. I told Daniel we would try again, but on new terms. Honesty would no longer be optional. We started therapy, together and separately. He kept in touch with Claire, respectfully and cautiously. He didn't force a role as a father, but stayed open if the boy ever wanted more. Healing didn't happen quickly. There were days I couldn't look at him without remembering the letter. But there were also moments when I saw who he was becoming, someone finally honest, even when it was uncomfortable. We rebuilt piece by piece, not pretending everything was okay, but choosing to work towards something stronger. This wasn't the life I expected. It wasn't the marriage I thought I had, but it became real in a different way. Not flawless, not easy, but grounded in truth. And for the first time, I felt like we were actually beginning again, with nothing left to hide.